Hello, this is Robert, the History Crusader. Today I'll be talking about the Siege of Malta. If you've never heard of it, I can't understand why. It's amazing. It's one of the most amazing battles that ever happened. If you're into Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, gaming, then you will love the Siege of Malta. This is the 1565 one. It was just an astonishing battle, and it was so very well documented. Francisco Balbi de Correggio, he wrote a diary during the time of the battle. Historians came and immediately after the battle to investigate it. The Turkish side, they also wrote an account about it. So it's very, very well documented. Now, it's really good because it's the last real crusade. So, the Knights of St. John, originally one of the two main crusader groups, like the Knights Templar and the Knights of St. John. Knights of St. John, they were kicked out of Jerusalem. They went to Rhodes, then they were kicked out of Rhodes, and then they went to Malta. And they didn't really want to go to Malta. It's tiny, not very fertile, not much going on there. But it has a fantastic harbour. Great place to park the boats. From there, the Knights of St. John would go around and basically do pirating of the Ottoman ships and merchants. And while the Ottoman were going around enslaving people, driving their boats up on the shore, just grabbing people, emptying whole villages of people, then take them back to North Africa to sell, or to Constantinople to sell, make lots of money. This is what you did. When people from around this time say they went off to make their fortune, this is what they were doing. They were just going around grabbing Italians, Slavs, Spanish people, anyone on the coast, Greeks. Just go into a village, round them up, chuck them on the boat, take them to some port somewhere, sell them off. Cash in hand, good to go. Anyway, in this battle, the Grand Master of the Knights of St. John was Jean de la Valette. Now, the main harbour consisted of the fort of St. Elmo, St. Michael, which is behind St. Michael was the township of Sengali. Then on the other side of the harbour was a Fort St. Angelo, which was attached to Birgu. So in 1564, Suleiman the Magnificent, he was the greatest Ottoman emperor ever. Just brilliant, fantastically successful in war, capturing cities, building, making money. So he had a council and he decided he was going to invade Malta. Explained that Malta was a stepping stone to Sicily, and then to Italy, and then the whole of south of Europe. Basically, the Ottoman Empire at the time, they could do no wrong. They had lots of money, they were fantastically organized, had a great administration. If they couldn't do something, they would find someone who could do it for them and pay them. If they couldn't get enough manpower, they would just go out and grab people from some village and bring them in. So basically, if they wanted to do something, they could get it done. So, the Knights of St. John had 43 years before been defeated at the Rhodes by Suleiman the Magnificent. And one of those knights that was kicked out of Rhodes was the Grand Master, Jean de la Valette. Now, when the Turks arrived, they had 40,000 trained soldiers. Their ships had 80,000 rounds of shot. and they had 130 long-oared galleys. 30 galleons, very large, and could carry 1,000 men, and 6,000 barrels of gunpowder. Don't smoke on that ship. So, on the 18th of May, they arrived at Malta. They had three, so in the at Birgu and St. Elmo, at Medina, that's the capital city of Malta, and they all fired off 3 cannon shot. That was the message. So everyone would hear that. All the peasants, get all your food together, get all your animals, come to the harbour, basically, or Medina, the capital city. So with all the food gone, no people, so they'd have to the Ottomans, when they turn up, they'd have to just depend on whatever they brought. Now the harbour was blocked by a massive chain, huge chain, and so no ships could enter it. What can you do? Right. So when the Ottomans turned up, they realised they had to get rid of the fort of St. Elmo first. This was a much smaller fort. It was the smallest of all of them. It was the newest. It wasn't very well built. So, let's see. Now, the 2 knights, Adrian della Riveria and Bartolomeo Faroni, they were captured by the Ottomans, and they forced them to tell them where the weakest spot was in the fortress. And they told them. So then they attacked that section, and they were horribly beaten. They managed, after a battle of 6 hours, so 21 Christian soldiers were killed, 150 wounded, but 700 Ottomans were dead. So they decided to kill the 2 knights that had died. Now, the 24th of May, the bombardment of St. Elmo began, and it was doomed. The walls were crumbling straight away. It wasn't very well built because they had to build it in a rush. Now, and then Dragut, the governor of Tripoli from North Africa, he arrived. He's a long-time pirate. He originally Italian, was taken as a slave, rose in the ranks, got his own ship, ended up becoming the governor of Tripoli, one of the main slave trading ports in history. So the attack and sale of St. Elmo increased dramatically. So Pepe de Ruvo, a knight who died in the fortress of St. Elmo, he was counting the shots. How many shots, cannon shots, did they shoot each day? And he says no less than 6,000 to 7,000 a day. Not good. So on the 8th of June, the poor knights had had enough in there, and the soldiers, they thought, this is it. We're just dropping dead. We're being shot all the time. The walls are crumbling. So what we suggest is either we leave, or we're just going to run out and sally out into the enemy and get killed. And La Valette didn't like that at all. He decided to find some volunteers. So he had about 150 volunteers that would go in there, take their place. So he sent them a message saying, well, you can leave if you want. Well, I've got 150 volunteers that will replace you, and I'd be happier with people I could actually trust. So then they sent a letter back immediately begging him, don't send anyone, they'll stay there. So on the feast of Corpus Christi, the 21st of June, St. Elmo fell. And meanwhile, the reason they made sure that St. Elmo kept fighting to the end, beyond, because usually once you break down the walls, if there's a breach in the wall, that's it, you give up. You can give up and, can we go? Yeah, you can go. And they let you go, and then you come back. Then they just go in there and take it over. But they stay there, the walls were breached, it was crumbling, the whole place, everyone was dying, all the people were injured. And then finally on the 21st of June, St. Elmo fell on the Feast of Corpus Christi. And Mustafa Pasha looked at the ruins of this great victory of theirs, this small little fort which is just ruins. And he thought, well, this little son has cost us so dearly. How much will we have to pay for such a large father? So the Turks' losses just for St. Elmo's were 8,000 and the defenders lost 1,500. Now, Sunday 24th of June, the bodies of 4 knights from St. Elmo's were beheaded, put on crosses and put out into the ocean, and they floated over to the other 2 forts at St. Angelo. And they saw the bodies and they recognized who they were, and this made them very, very angry. So what they did was they got all of the Turkish prisoners, cut their heads off, and just started shooting the cannons at the Turks while they were strutting around St. Elmo's, scavenging whatever they could, and they were bombarded. But they weren't bombarded with cannons, they were bombarded with their comrades' heads all over the place. So after that, the bodies, they stopped sending out bodies. Now, then they started to attack the other 2 forts. So a siege tower was made. And so that was big and tall, just like in Kingdom of Heaven, but you just have one, not 4. It's 4 stupid. That didn't happen, but they did have one. And what happened was they brought it right up to the wall so they could shoot in with their arrows and shoot at people. So what they did was the knights burrowed through their wall. The wall's about 15 feet thick. And just before they broke through, they put a cannon in there. So they broke through, poked the cannon out, boom! They loaded the cannon with chain shot. So that's either 2 cannonballs connected with a chain or 2 half cannonballs with a chain. And it would come out and spin and just chop everything up. And what it did was it just cut off the legs off the siege engine. And then the siege engine started to fall down, and as it was falling, they pulled the cannon out, started refilling the hole. So they'd achieved nothing. Then, when the walls were pummeled with cannonball fire, so all the walls just ended up being a big heap of rocks. So then the Turks got a large barrel and filled it full of gunpowder, chain, nails. And this was rolled right up to the wall, then up the wall, and then it rolled down, and it ended up in the knights' trench. Unfortunately, they had a slow-burning fuse on it, too slow. And the knights saw that, and they rolled it up the ramp of the wall again, and it rolled down the other side and into the trench where the Turks, who were waiting to advance after the explosion. And they were devastated, it blew up, the knights inside and the soldiers charged out immediately after the explosion. Total disaster for the Turks. Meanwhile, most of the battles at this time, the Turks would invade, thousands just coming up to the wall. And they were sensibly dressed with linen. And the knights had these hoops, which were basically covered in napalm, basically. Tar and all this flammable stuff over a steel hoop. And they'd set them on fire, throw them over, and they would bounce, and they would land. And they would land on 3 guys, and they would burn. And because everyone was crammed in so much together, they just set everyone else on fire, and they just kept dropping these out. And they also had Greek fire. This is something from the Roman times. Basically a flamethrower. But the flame would actually stick on you like napalm and burn you. So it was very, very messy affair, very messy fighting. Now, in the city of Medina, they did not have enough soldiers, they did not have enough gunpowder, they didn't have enough shot, the walls were about 200 years old, it wasn't looking good, they only had a handful of soldiers, but the Turks didn't know this. And let's see, Don Mesquita, he was the governor. So what he did was, he got all the peasants to dress up in military uniforms, had plenty of uniforms. Then they got them to march around the top. Oh, they even got the women as well. So from a distance, it looked like it was packed. Soldiers, there are hundreds and hundreds of soldiers all around. And then the Turks decided, well, this is too hard. We're going to have to winter here. So let's go take Medina. That'll have to be easier than fighting here. And then we can just live on. If we do it quickly, we'll have all the food that's in there. We'll have a great winter here. But then as they're approaching it, they were seen in the distance, and then they saw all the soldiers thinking, that's not good. And then all the cannons started firing, boom, 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 boom. But they were well out of range. They're firing like idiots. So then as they're marching towards it, there are all these cannonballs just harmlessly rolling past them. All these people shooting at them with their muskets. No, not a chance of the bullets reaching him. Not at all. And then they just stopped, sent a few scouts out, and they said, yep, all the soldiers are all around the fort. That is really well manned. They're fresh. They haven't been fighting for 3 months. Obviously, they've got a lot of powder because they're just wasting it. So they decided, nope, let's go back. So they went back to Brigu and Sicily, and they're fighting there again. Now, on the 18th of August, a wall at Brigu was breached, and La Valette. Now, this will sound very familiar because they copy this in Lord of the Rings 3, The Return of the King. Right. So the wall was breached. They're all coming in over the wall, and La Valette, remember, he's 71, he put a helmet on his head, grabbed a spear, called his staff and said, follow me, because everyone else was panicking, thinking, this is it, we're finished. And suddenly all the peasants and soldiers came towards him and went to that breach, and he was fighting there. And from every side, people were rushing to them, and La Valette was wounded because a bomb went off. And he was wounded in the leg, and they said, you've got to go now, come on. This is ridiculous, you're going to get killed, you're going to get hurt, go, go, go. And he says, no, this is what he said. He says, I will not withdraw as long as those banners are still on the wall. And he said, I'm 71, and how is it possible for me, man of my age, to die more gloriously than in the midst of my friends and brothers in the service of God? That's it. Well, obviously he didn't have to die because they were successful. They managed to fill the breach, and the attack was called off. So then they just patched up the wall again. So, at the same time, 10 boats full of janissaries. They had 1,000 troops in them, so 100 in each boat. They were trying to get around to the tip of Singalia, where the chain was across the harbour, because if they could get past that chain, they could get between the two forts, and then they could just wreak havoc. But, unfortunately, there was a cannon. There were 5 cannons there. And it was right on the water level, and it was hidden, so you couldn't see it. And as they came around, they were in a straight line. And there they are on this gun battery, thinking, they're coming straight at us. So they loaded up the 5 cannons with chain shot again. Remember, 2 half cannonballs together with a chain. And the 5 of them shot, and in the first volley, 9 of the ships were destroyed. The second volley, the other ship was very badly damaged and just managed to make it back to safety. The other 9, well, 800 men died. So, another bad attempt. Now, oh yeah, by the way, this is the book by Francisco Balbi de Correggio. He was actually at the battle. And if you look here, see that? There's La Valette. And in this picture, there's all the Turks invading, coming over. And there he is. There, you can't stop me. I'm going to die here. Now, this picture was made just after the whole siege. And if you can see there, there's another person. Now, no one knows exactly who he is, but there are all these soldiers with their muskets, and they are very good at shooting. And he got up and ran the whole length of this, waving the flag of the Order of St. John. And because he was running so fast and so close, they all shot at him, but they missed him. And this was a huge, huge thing. I mean, seriously. You'd think, oh no, they're all going to die. They must be very demoralised. Yeah, woo! No, still had plenty of spirit. Now, at September 11, finally, the relief force arrived from there. They had landed a few days previously on the other part of the island, and they'd made their way inland, and eventually they turned up. So September 11, they managed to, they turned up, the battle started, and that was the end of it. So the Turks lost 30,000 troops. Let's see, 250 knights died. The rest were wounded or crippled for life. Of the soldiers and the Maltese, 7,000 people died. So out of a garrison of 9,000, only about 600 were left. So basically, if the battle had gone on for another 2 weeks, they would have all been dead. Now, the reason I think you should read about it is because, one, Francisco did a diary, so he doesn't talk about it generally. Every day is this person did this, that person died. It's very, you know, you are there. It's not like a general sort of like, these people went there and that happened. No, he went there, this person did this, and this is amazing. And there's a lot of intrigue going on. For instance, the King of Spain told the governor at Sicily, who was in charge of them, don't send the boats to relieve the Knights of St. John. Don't risk it, because the boats are very, very, very expensive. So he put it off as long as possible. He made sure that everything is dragged out. Why he didn't send them? It's just so there they were waiting for them. They're waiting for the relief. Yeah, sure, the relief will come because these are the other knights of the St. John, Order of St. John. They wanted to come. They were there waiting. And they just delayed, hoping. So basically they were hoping, well, they're basically going to fall. Now, the reason this is so amazing is because whatever the Turks set out to do, they did. They had the best tunnelers, they had the best arquebuses, they were the early muskets, they had the best cannons. They just had so much money. They had so much powder, they had so many cannons, they had so many boats. They just, bit like the United States in the 20th century. If they wanted to do something, yep, they'll do it. D-Day, how many people do we need? What do we need to get across? Yep, we'll get it. You build this, yeah, you bring that, make it happen. So they just, if they decided they were going to take a country, it happened. And Malta was just small. Only about 20 years before, the top island of Gorza. All the people on that top island, every last one of them was taken into slavery. All of them. So it was uninhabited. They decided they wanted to do it, they did it. No one could stop them. That was it. But this battle, they proved that if you just did not give in, that was it. You could win. So, Siege of Malta. Great story. Right, so if you like this video, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Next week, I'll tell you about another battle, the Siege of Corchula, which happened the year after.